Hmm. Okay, this is a video I did not plan on making. My life is so good now that it's really hard to even remember how difficult it was, how dark it was at one point. Some things are better forgotten. And we never forget them completely. But there is a way to remember and to integrate the learning, the lessons, without having to feel the reality of a hard time. These days I feel joy. Sometimes I feel a little unhappy. Sometimes I feel scared. But I don't feel the level of dark feelings that I felt at one time. So I'm aware that right now, I said I'm having a life review. I'm aware that I'm integrating all the different parts of my life, and it feels as if I've been several different people in this lifetime, and that I've lived several different lives. And one of those lives was very dark. And I was reminded of it yesterday because I came across a couple of YouTube videos that it was quite amazing to me that the women I heard were talking about this stuff. And I made a video recently about lifting the dark veil. And the story of that dark veil is darker than I would like it to be. And I don't quite know sometimes how to frame it. And it has become so dim in my memory now that it's a little hard to access. But I'm just going to talk about this in whatever way I can, in whatever way I can remember it at this point. And the thing I know is that sometimes I question whether I was actually a part of this, whether I personally, whoever I am in my small self, was actually in the picture. But what I know is that these things really happen in the story of humanity. They are happening in the present reality for some. They have happened to many. And historically, the story of humanity has been full of atrocity that is hard to think about or contemplate, much less to get in touch with the part of ourselves that may have participated in these things, both as victims and perpetrators. So there was a time in the 90s after I left my marriage when I got into therapy, and leaving my marriage had involved a very serious illness where I thought I was dying. I didn't get to have one of those cool NDEs. I seemed to be firmly planted in this reality no matter how hard I was trying to get out of it. I was very sick. There was an epidemic of pneumonia going on at the time, which I caught. And then it got worse from there. And I ended up in the hospital in a coma for 15 hours. And the diagnosis was pneumonia and a viral infection of the brain stem. I just remember having this fever that was incredible. And at the same time, I had this belief that, like Jesus, I think I was 33 at the time, like Jesus, I was going to die and be resurrected in 3 days. I believed that was going to literally happen. That was what I wanted to happen, because I wanted to prove to everybody around me, especially to my husband, that my religious beliefs were true. I wanted to see a miracle, and I wanted to die and then come back so that my life could change and get better. But I was basically aware the whole time I was trying to go somewhere other than Earth, and I couldn't get there. And they called it a coma. I don't know if it actually was. It's hard to say. But I did feel like I was there the whole time and aware of everything that was going on around me. I just wasn't opening my eyes because I couldn't face life anymore. And my mother came to see me, and I was just laying there in the hospital. And everyone, my family, thought I was dying. And there was this pivotal point where this nurse was inserting a suppository, and she apologized to me as if I was there. And that act of kindness brought me back. I was feeling as if I could not face life. My marriage was not good. My life felt so hard. But her act of kindness made me have this thought, maybe I could come back. Because trying to die didn't seem to be working. It seemed like it was going to be a very long, hard struggle for me to die. And the kindness that she showed me, not knowing if I could hear her, I decided to open my eyes and come back from wherever it was. and to be alive again, because for many years I had felt like the walking dead. And after that, I continued to feel like the walking dead. In fact, it kind of got worse before it got better, because I went into therapy. I left my, I'm not telling this story very well, but my illness did continue for a while after I woke up. My brain was affected. I couldn't remember things. I couldn't count backwards from 100. I couldn't remember things, and I had a baby at the time who got abruptly weaned when I got sick. She was 9 months old. So I went home from the hospital, and I just saw 11:11 on the time stamp here. This may be a very long video. And that 11:11 tells me, my angels are telling me, you're doing good. Keep going. Keep talking. Keep telling your story. It's okay. It's okay. It's hard. There's so much to the story. It's a little hard to put it into words, but I'll try. So I went home. I told my husband I couldn't take care of the kids anymore. I was in no physical state to do it, but I was also in a very depleted mental, emotional state. And I felt like I was making these choices, but they were kind of being made for me. So I ended up leaving my husband and my kids. And for the first time, he had to really step up and take care of them during that time. We had 5 at that time, and I was pregnant with my 6th. So I left, and my life was falling apart, and I moved in with my sister in Albuquerque, and I got into therapy. I recovered physically, and then it was time to heal emotionally. And as I went deeper into therapy, I began to discover many repressed memories. And I began to rescue inner children from scenes of severe physical and sexual abuse, mostly sexual. And the story was that this had been happening to me ever since I was a baby. And as I say, I've never really been able to exactly reconcile what happened. It feels to me like a lot of it may have been not in the physical, because there was never any physical evidence that these things had happened to me. But there is the evidence that both my sisters have very similar memories of us being part of a very dark, satanic, ritualistic abuse. So, while I never had physical evidence the evidence I had was how I felt inside. It was the level of terror and despair and depression that I felt about life. And when I told these stories, when I found these inner children who were so devastated, their story matched how I felt inside. So that was what told me that it was real. I believed that it was real. And I spent a number of years working with therapists to heal this stuff. And then at a certain point, I was ready to move on with my life. And then I just continued to be my own therapist. I could play both sides of it. I could tell the story of the children, and then I could be the one who put them on the back of a swan and carried them away out of the atrocity, the pain, the loneliness, to a safe place that I constructed in my mind, where there were giant angels that watched over the cliffs and didn't allow anything bad to happen to them anymore. And I did healing work. I remember there being certain milestones of healing. I remember one where I had gone to a massage therapist, and she also worked. It wasn't just massage. She also did spiritual work of some kind. And I remember discovering a part of me that wanted to die. And I allowed her to die. I allowed her to leave. There are traditions in shamanic healing where you go and you bring back the parts of yourself that have been fragmented through trauma. But I realized that not only did I need to bring parts of myself back to me, but I also needed to let parts of me leave that couldn't take it anymore, couldn't handle their pain, because you see, there has to be healing, there has to be an end point. Yes, feeling and remembering is healing these things, but they don't stay in the darkness. They get to come to the light. And the children who have been unimaginably harmed do get to heal. And I know that because I've done it. And I remember at some point by myself going through a shamanic journey and seeing myself as if I was an egg that was being buried in the ground and was disintegrating and then rising up in new life. I realized that these parts of me that were so damaged needed to be able to die. And what is death? It's just the change of form. They needed to be able to feel that they could leave and that something new could be born out of that was fresh and knew, that was a virgin, that was unharmed, because our essence, my essence, is untouched and unharmed from anything that has ever happened to me. The essence of God is unharmed by anything that has ever happened within creation, and yet there is a depth of experience. There is a reason we go through these things, and it does contribute to the expansion of consciousness, the expansion of the experience of love. It's a very confusing thing for our ego. Our ego can't possibly grasp it. But our wise self does understand that when we go to the depths of evil, it elicits an expansion of love, because love has to expand to be big enough and deep enough to respond to the depth of the evil. And that's what it leads to. It leads to more and greater love, ultimately. But it's not easy. It's a hard pill to swallow. And the souls who choose these paths do not do it lightly. And when they choose them, they may not even realize how hard they're going to be in actual experience. I think that's all I have to say today. Thank you for listening.